In this video, I'm going to go over how an alt-right media outlet uses attitudes to language in their article. Amen to that, Democrats will have to change hundreds of English words if they really want to be inclusive. After going over what strategies PJ Media's authors use in the article, we can talk about how the attitudes to language, namely language change or politically correct language, were used in order to get support for the article and their argument. The first strategy in this article and the most rampant in this article is digression, or when weakly related or not even related topics are brought up. According to Grice's maxims, it is expected that a conversation will satisfy four basic rules, which is quality, quantity, matter, and relation. When the author is digressing, they are ignoring or very weakly abiding by the relation maxim. Digression is also a strategy used in computer-mediated communication for the sake of being impolite, usually by online trolls. It purposely derails the topic of the conversation and it creates less chance for the other person to build their point, and also has a high chance of creating agitation. The title of the article itself tells us how the author wants us to view the information that they're about to tell us. So from this headline, we can tell that the author wants to appeal to a sense of futility. They want the readers to view the Democrats' efforts as a waste or as absurd. The introduction of the article gives context for what the text is actually about. From the introduction, we can see that the main concern of the author is Missouri Democrat representative saying "a woman" alongside "a man." Without knowing more, it is impossible to say whether this was actually relevant to the intentions of the representative. When we go past the introduction of the article, we can see that the topic of inclusive language is still the main focus. But from some of the examples that we can see, it is obvious that the author of the article intentionally applies the intentions of Representative Emanuel Cleaver incorrectly. The author purposefully avoids mentioning language that works to be inclusive for women, but instead focuses on orthographic instances of men, or MEN. Words like mentor, menopause, and abdomen are mentioned, and the author says that the men in these words should be replaced with woman. So how does the use of digression serve the author's purpose in this article? The focus on the single instance of replacing men with women orthographically regardless of the context of the original event not only takes away from the initial focus of the event, but by bringing up unrelated words like mentor and menopause, and also talking about the large number of words that include men, the author succeeds in expressing the Democrats' attempts at inclusive language as absurd or unrealistic. The next strategy that will be discussed is recontextualization, or when the author creates a new context for an event. When the author presents the event with a different context, it creates a new text. One example of recontextualization is when reports of sexism only include instances that can be described as jokes, shifting blame onto the accuser for not getting the joke, and it creates the perception that the sexist actions are less intentional than they actually might have been. The instances of digression in this article are a type of recontextualization in itself. The author has completely centered their new created text of the event on replacing orthographic instances of men with women and implying that this is the goal of Democrats for inclusivity, creating an absurd and far-fetched perspective on what the original intentions might have been. Negative attitudes to politically correct language often centers around serious topics, inclusivity of women in this case, and also involves allegations of stupidity. When language is called offensive, it is acknowledged that means that it causes harm or reveals prejudice. By digressing and framing the pursuit of inclusive language as a never-ending revision of orthography, it is avoiding actual harmful language and admittance of prejudice. In conclusion, the author at PJ Media knew that to both appeal to the audience of an alt-right media outlet and also reinforce the resistance to the changing of offensive language, it was important to create a text that was both purposely and polite and made attempts to disable substantial conversation on the matter.